Over the last 24 hours, there's been a crazy discourse surrounding the game Omori between its creator Omocat and one of their previous developers, Melon. With every passing day, there seems to be more and more info being released about it, which I'm going to cover in this video. Keep in mind that there's a lot of gaps and missing evidence for quite a lot of the accusations I'll be discussing, so take everything with a grain of salt. This all initially kicked off with a thread from Melon talking about their grievances working on Omori. They said, "I'll just air out my grievances now, I don't feel like carrying this anymore. I joined the Omori team in 2019. I remember being invested in production right away because getting paid to do dev work on a game I like is basically my dream." They then go on to detail about how they went pretty crazy working on it, doing 12 to 18 hour shifts and wouldn't mess around on the clock at all. People would leave for the day and come back to find them still working, somehow managing to keep all this up for half a year until their friend tried to pull them back from it. Apparently Omo resisted this because they were a golden workhorse, and then 6 months later Melon became debilitated from all the work. They admit it's their own doing, but Omo suddenly started treating them like garbage, saying that they didn't want to work anymore and asking them for a doctor's note. Melon also claims Omo would guilt them into working as hard as when they were overworking themselves and expected more of them and downplayed their illness, although there's no evidence provided to support this specifically. Later on, right as the game's about to launch, Melon says that they had the rug pulled out from underneath them, with Omo saying she's going to take back the royalties they were promised. In some of the screenshots Melon posted, we can see a back and forth between them about the royalty specifically, which I'll throw up on screen now. This is quite interesting to look at because in both of these screenshots Omo says that they're going to reduce the royalties but not take them away, even though Melon repeatedly states that Omo was going to cut them completely, but from the sounds of it they were going to be reduced, which is what we see in the final screenshot with Omo. Omo offers them $3,000 for the work on the game, which Melon then declines. After this, Melon talks about knowing someone else that was fucked over way more by Omo and provides some screenshots of them talking to them a bit about their experience, but doesn't name anyone specifically. Apparently Melon made a post similar to this thread previously, but they took it down because the team begged them to. Along with this, there was also apparently an issue of crediting where they were not listed on the game website or the Wikipedia, despite being listed in the game credits multiple times. Melon then finishes the thread off talking about some of the different areas they helped significantly, including the 1 HP mechanic and the Aubrey school fight sequence. In response to this lengthy thread, Omo made a response the next day painting the whole ordeal in a very different light. The whole thing is quite long, so I'll give a summary to the most important parts and then put them up on screen if you're interested in taking a look. They initially go into their side of the overworking situation, stating that they noticed Melon overworking themselves and urged them to slow down and work at a reasonable pace. They thought at the time paying overtime was enough, but apologized for not putting their foot down more and preventing Melon from overworking themselves. When Melon said they were getting sick, Omo said that they urged Melon to seek a doctor because they were concerned with their health and wanting them to get help to recover from whatever was going on, and hoped that they got the help that they needed. It's important to note that generally when you claim illness to your employer, if it's going to have a significant impact on your future working with them, it's not unreasonable for them to get details as to best help you. Melon doesn't go into any detail on what the illness is, so it's difficult to make any judgment on it at this point, since it could change everything quite dramatically depending on what it is. The next part is probably one of the most significant, where Omo goes into more detail about how the whole royalty situation actually worked. She states that those who worked through multiple years were offered royalties, and that Melon was one of the people who was offered it as well. As development for Omori progressed, they realized that Melon was making decisions on their own accord that disrupted Omori's production. This apparently included overriding other people's code and talking down to other team members' abilities. Despite being told not to do it, they still did and was paid the extra overtime despite the extra work and friction it was creating. Another element that Melon didn't really touch on, other than saying that they didn't have it, was the contract. Omo states that the contract was breached when Melon stopped working on the game consistently and then eventually left Omori's development before the end of the production. Although Melon did a lot of great work, there was a lot of extra work that others had to pull to cover for what wasn't being completed by Melon after everything that was going on. Melon was also in a salaried position, getting paid for work that wasn't being completed at the time, which makes the whole situation that much more complicated. Omo then goes on to reiterate that she should have made it more clear about the conditions for the royalties that were in the contract that Melon signed at the time, making the assumption that Melon would have known that by leaving the production she was legally giving up the royalties. She should have been more firm in the decision making of the finances and not pushed it as a group decision because she was the one in control at that point. Omo also regretted how she had broken the news in such an unprofessional manner and how offering the compensation was just a slap in the face at the time, making the whole thing so much worse. About an hour after this post, Melon responded saying, "You wrote 2 paragraphs for not listening to me. The overworking is on me, as well as some of the fallout afterwards. My problem was that you belittled me constantly in person for not performing when I got sick." They also linked an image that doesn't seem to particularly work in their favor. It includes a conversation between themselves and Omo, where Melon has missed the deadline and Melon just says they're falling asleep at their computer. This in particular gained a lot of attention in the replies, with quite a lot of people echoing the sentiment that it just looks a lot worse for Melon than Omocat, and I kind of agree. Among all these posts, Melon shows some proof that they were on the payroll, but as a few users pointed out, Omocat states that the first 3 months Melon worked incredibly hard, and then inconsistently for the next 3, which kind of lines up with what we see here. On the opposite side to all this is one of the other team members giving their 2 cents on the whole discussion, saying, "Melon is the person that introduced me to them, and for that I am eternally grateful, but I can't just stay silent now, sorry. Omocat as a whole are the best group of people I could have ever wished to work with, and I wish more people cared enough to ask us for our version. And I hate to have to jump into a drama because all I ever thought I'd post about in this horrible website was the video games and anime shit I like to play and watch, but I cannot stand for slander against my friends and their 6 years of insane hard work. Overall, it's honestly hard to get a good read on the whole situation. There's so much missing evidence and context, but at the same time, since there's so many different situations here and due to some of this being in person, it can be hard to get evidence for everything that you really need. I'm honestly not sure what the next step will be here other than some of the more concrete evidence coming forward or the contract itself being revealed, but I can't imagine either of them wanting that to happen. It all just seems like it got way too out of control on both sides, and this is the end result. But that's all I wanted to cover for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts or comments on the situation, feel free to leave them in the comments below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.